Welcome, everybody. We've got a special guest today. Of course, we got George, as always, me, Captain Sergio. And today we got Dave Brown. He's a senior marketing manager. Is that correct?
Senior marketing specialist over at Okuma. Been there for 18 years.
18 years.
That's
Man,
right.
where'd you start when you were 7?
Yeah, pretty much. Feels like it.
That's funny.
Dave, you know, we really appreciate you coming on board. You're in California time, but I know between iCast and all these other shows, you've been really busy. So
it's been pretty crazy. I was up in the Pacific Northwest this week fishing for salmon over on the Columbia River. I leave next week. I head up to Minnesota to do some content filming for some walleye product that we got coming out, but out on the road quite a bit.
All right. So now you're back in the office for a little bit, or?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, exactly. I come in and change some paperwork and head out the door again.
Well, you're
busy.
Exactly.
Now, I know that you've had some really good products lately, and I'm glad to see them, because I tell you, in some cases, you know, you've had a real good product, but it's the old thing. It was just starting to get a little old, and you know how people are. They like the new color sometime, or the little different design. And I think you guys did an excellent job for this coming year. I mean, I think it's terrific.
We do. We like to keep everything fresh. You know, everything's got a couple of year cycle. If it's something that does really well for us and, you know, sells a lot, we'll keep it in the lineup longer. But if it's something that gets a little bit stale and maybe slows down a bit, we will, you know, change that out, freshen it up, maybe discontinue it altogether and bring out something new. But we like to keep everybody on their toes a little bit.
Yeah, so, there's a few things we're using lately that we like. And Sergio, I know you just got some new stuff in yourself that.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that. I got the new X, baby. And I tell you, it's a gorgeous looking reel.
They are awesome reels. That's our newest introduction at iCast this year. Just a phenomenal reel, all metal reel, 24 pounds of drag, even on that little size. Just great little reels.
That was really amazed me is the drag on that reel.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. And like the Inspira, you know, we were talking about the Inspira just a little bit ago, the ISX reels. Those two particular reels are built specifically for Florida saltwater fishing. And what's unique about those is they don't have the little anti-reverse switch on the back of them. If you noticed, a lot of spinning reels have that little switch that's just below the spool, so you can actually wind backwards or wind forwards.
But I never use them.
Most people don't. That technology has been fading away over several years. It's finally been fading away. But what that does, you know, in our thought with the saltwater fishing in the Florida is that it's just one less area for water to protrude into that reel. And you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've had clients too, by accident, while fighting a fish, hit that little switch, and the thing just goes spinning backwards on them, and it's not good. It had to happen on a tarpon one time, and yeah, that was a beautiful bird's nest.
Yeah, exactly. You don't find that technology too often anymore, or people that actually know how to use that. With the advances in all the drag systems that are out there nowadays, a lot of them on the Okuma product, all the carbonite drags and the tremendous amount of drag force that you get and how smooth they are, you just don't really need that back winding technology.
Yeah. And that is, like you're saying, more on the old school. Some of the younger fishermen, if you said back winding, they look at you cross-eyed, like, what are you talking about? Exactly. They don't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So those two reels have been doing great for us. Those X series, they just arrived right out of iCast. So, you know, hopefully you guys start seeing them in some of your local retailers down there. We've been shipping them as quick as we're getting them, container by container.
Well, since we're talking about the X, let's just kind of talk a little bit more about it, because it's actually got 11 bearings. You got 10 ball bearings.
Exactly. Yeah. 22 pounds of drag on the smallest, and then 24 on that larger two sizes. 11 total ball bearings. It's got a regular wind in handle design, so it doesn't have that little knob on the other side that you have to pop in and out. It actually a wind in. If you want to switch it, you can actually wind it in on the left side or the right side.
That's a blessing, because that little thing, sometimes you can't get it out.
Exactly. There's that
Or
little
the-
plastic nub in
Yeah,
there, and you
it's
pop
been
that thing out and
pain.
move it.
Yeah.
What,
Or they
what was the
break
reason
off.
for that, Dave? What was the reason for that little plastic knob?
It's just what kept it, because you had two different threads. You had a forward thread on both directions. So one of them has to be smaller than the other, which is what it is on the larger size regular wind ends. But that little nub just made it a little bit easier. And then the old trend was that you wanted a folding handle. So you can unscrew it and you
Right.
can fold that thing down just so it's a little more compact when you're putting it in your rod storage or however you're else going to do it. But for a reel that you're going to be pulling on tarpon or big snook or anything else, you want something that's just got a lot of force and rigidity to it.
Right.
Oh,
What's the range on the X series, like size wise?
So there's a 2500, a 3000, and a 4000. All of them with 11 ball bearings, and they're all fairly high speed with a 6.2 to 1 gear ratio. Each crank of that handle, you're getting 31 to 34 inches of line. So if you happen to be somebody that's doing some slow pitch fishing, which is very popular, was on the East Coast a lot. It's starting to get real popular out on the West Coast here too. Is if you're driving along, and of course we're fishing quite a bit deeper water than you folks generally are. But if you see a range of fish that are maybe down from the bottom, say 50 feet up to about 30 feet, and you have 20 feet of where the fish are, just a couple of cranks of that handle, and you're gonna be able to cover most of that water column there. Or if you got a high speed bait that you want to work along the surface, or just something that's darting through that water, that higher speed with that higher retrieve of line, it's going to get it back to the boat. You can really work those baits a little bit quicker.
And it's got a brass pinion gear on it.
Pinion gear, exactly. Yeah, it's got the brass pinion gear, very rigid, very strong, built specifically for saltwater. A couple of our other saltwater products, we went to the full machined aluminum gearing, stainless steel gearing. That's going to be like the Tesoro. When you get to the real high end offshore type of spinning reels, you start getting into some of that stainless steel internal components. But on that X series, that brass for what we're doing for snook and redfish and everything else it's all you need, and it's a great little reel.
Explain something for me a minute. What's a C40X carbon injected rotor and side plate?
So the C40X is an Okuma proprietary formula. It's long strand graphite fiber. So rather than just a mold that's getting injected with graphite, little tiny particles, this is long strand graphite. And you can see it on a few of our older reels. These happen to be painted all the way through, but you can't see them. But what that does is that gives those long fibers a chance to kind of interconnect and interwove, if that makes sense, right? So they're long strands of graphite that are injected into those molds, and it makes it 25% stronger, 50% stronger, and 25% lighter. So you don't have all of that graphite carbon component that's just mushed in there. You got these long strand fibers that are over and interlocking and everything else, making it stronger. And that's just in that rotor and on the side plate, the two places that you don't need as much force, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. Because I just got it and I took it out of the box and just played with it a little bit, and it's so smooth.
They're very smooth.
It feels like a $600 reel.
That lightweight C40X, they start at just 7 ounces. So aluminum spool, aluminum handle. You got that C40X side plate and rotors we talked about, but just starting at 7 ounces and still putting it out over 22 pounds of drag on the smallest and 24 on that larger size.
And then it's also, it says it's got a one-piece seamless ball, the ball wire design.
Oh, exactly. So the bail wire.
Yeah.
So your bail switch that you flip over when you're casting, it's just a one-piece solid design that goes all the way around there. There's no little ridges or anything for your line to get caught on.
Yeah, I've seen that before, where you're right where that bail connects to where the line roller is. It has to get over that little hump, and if they don't have it real smooth right there, that line can get stuck. Especially their small 10-pound braids can get stuck right in there and break you off.
Exactly. And for those of you guys that are captains or guides out there, you got a client that might not know what they're doing. They drop it or hit it on the gunnel or put it into a rod rack. That little piece of wire can actually move. It'll pop up, pop down, pop out. But when it's a solid one piece all the way around, you don't have to worry about that issue.
Right.
And I guess you water tested this pretty good for saltwater too?
We did, yeah. We've been testing this reel for a little over 2 years now. We've had it just on an unnamed project for quite some time. This last year, we just introduced the X Series bait cast reel, which is it's one of our big retailers. It's an exclusive until October. Then we're going to bring it into our regular lineup. It's in the current catalog now for 2025. But with that, we wanted to come out. We wanted to have that X Series going to be it's our top of the line bait cast reel. Now this is going to be the top of the line for your light inshore spinning reel. So kept it all under the same family. We've got some X Series bass rods that are real light. Probably nothing that you would use for the inshore stuff. But it's kind of like that upper echelon of product for Okuma.
Right. And so like that's for us for inshore spinning, that's like our top of the line that we're looking at. And then the Inspira being that more middle price range, but that's a lot of bang for the buck in that reel. I really like that reel a lot.
The Inspira for the money.
It's got for the money, you can't beat that thing.
It'll go up against any competitor, in my opinion, that's $20 to $30 to $40 higher and beat it.
Right. And it's got, on that one, it's got the oversized gear on the inside of it. Also, now what's that gear made out of on that reel?
On the let's see, on the Inspira, I want to say that is it's our proprietary metal. So it's almost like an alloy that we use. I don't say an actual alloy because alloys generally aren't good in salt water, but it's a proprietary high density gearing that we put together. It's all real formed in there. That's built specifically for that inshore market as well. It doesn't have that little switch on the side. It's got the full and wind in handle. It's got the aluminum spool. It's got a full aluminum body on that reel. It's a full metal reel. It only starts at 7.1 ounces. Cool part, only about $100 is where they started. Yeah,
and that's what I like about it because good price point. It's got all the features of $150, $170 reel, and the aluminum body. It's not going to flex. The strength is there. It's going to stay smooth. So I mean, that's a lot of bang for the buck. And then the X Series, if you want to spend the extra money, that's like the cream of the crop.
Exactly. If you're a tournament angler and you're really looking for something that you want to finesse and cast all day, that's really light, that X Series is the way to go. But for your everyday fisherman that's out on the water chasing snook and redfish and everything else, those Inspiras are just a reel you cannot go wrong with.
Yeah. And for me, and Sergio, we do charters. So that Inspira reel has just got charters written all over it.
Well, the thing is, you got to have a reel that as a captain, I want a reel that's good, that's going to hold up.
Right.
But I also understand, and it just cringes you, and it's not the client's fault, but how many times do you hear, they grab the reel by the tip of the rod and they drag it towards them, and you're saying, no. Yeah. That texture on the deck of the boat is like sandpaper. You're tearing it up. So, but you want to give the clients,
good material,
reel, but yet you don't want to spend a lot of money. Now, when you have certain clients, I've got some clients that I take out that I would use the X on them because they're that type of client.
Sure.
Right.
But the average mama and pa and every day that I take out, especially the tourists from up north, you could give them $1,000 reel and the Inspira, and they couldn't tell you the difference.
Right.
Exactly. Especially on the spinning gear, you can really start to tell when you get into some of the bait cast reels or even some of the big conventional gear when you start getting into that level. But when you're in the spinning reel stuff, you can hand those two. They most likely would not even be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, because the smoothness is very close, very similar, and they're not going to know how many ball bearings which reel has. You're not going to know that, What I like also is even on the Inspira, you've got an actual ball bearing in the line roller. It's not sleeved. It actually has bearings in it, and that's a big difference for me.
That does make a big difference for sure. And the other nice thing on there, you've got, there's 4 different sizes. That one actually goes up to a 5,000 size.
Right.
So you do have, you're not going to take it offshore. You're not going to go chase blackfin and stuff with it. But it does make a nice little light offshore reel as well.
Right.
I'll tell you that 5,000 with 30-pound braid on it. It's a great red snapper reel.
Really, yeah, 220 yards, a 30-pound braid on that thing with a top shot. It's really all you need.
So now, and so actually, you're starting for example, I think, and from what I can see is you've got the X, and then you can step down to the ITX-CB, the carbon, and then you can go down to Inspira. So you actually got about
A
3
range.
price points there that are in what I consider the better grade reels on the market. So that the customer has a choice out there. And I think this is where over the years Okuma's lost a little bit, where the competitors just come out with so much stuff. It's not the right thing to do maybe, but you know, everybody like their toys, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Well, and too, years ago, I'm talking way back, Okuma got the stickler with like, oh, that's not really good product. That's not a good reel, so and so. But now, I mean, in the last 10 years, and especially in the last 4 years, some of the stuff you guys have come out with are so advanced. It's not the Okuma of way back when. You're every bit as good as all the big names, if not better, on some of the products, especially at the price points you're selling them.
For sure. When I started, as I mentioned, I've been there for about 18 years. When I started, we have a gentleman by the name of John Bretza, who's in our product development department. He's a product development manager. We used to rely on everything from overseas. They don't know how we fish out here.
Right.
We are Taiwanese. Okuma's a Taiwanese company, so everything is built overseas. But we would rely on everything that they would send us, regardless. They didn't test it on the West Coast. They didn't test it on the East Coast, anywhere else. But once he took over, everything really changed for the company, especially out here on the West Coast where we're out here in California. We've got the big long range fishery where right now we're fishing for bluefin tuna, and you have a legitimate shot at a 300-pounder anytime you go out.
Right.
But with the Makaira big lever drag reels that we introduced, that's been about 13 years now. Ever since that level of product came out, the whole company has changed overall. People look at us as a higher end brand.
Right. Right.
And the product has changed and actually brought itself up to that level all the way around. So we have the Makaira spinning reels. In fact, it's a $1,200 spinning reel, but we'll put that full machined aluminum spinning reel against anybody out there.
Right.
Super unique. It's just like a lever drag reel where you have a preset dial on the top, not just your regular drag dial, but if I want 30 pounds of drag, I can back it off, set it to 30 pounds and get right back to 30 pounds anytime I'm doing it. So some of the guys that are fishing sailfish on the East Coast they're loving that reel for that style of fishing. But that's just one point of how the product level has really elevated over the last, say, 10 years.
Well, I tell you what's happened. I got Michael Haynes. He's watching, and we did a show with him up in Crystal River. And, everybody's got their – we were fishing, of course, with Okuma that day. And he just said it, how impressed he was. He didn't realize – how good these Okumas were now, because he hadn't tried one in so many years. He's been, just sticking with the same one he's had, his other brand. But once he used the Okuma, he was very impressed with it.
It's like I said, it's definitely a different company than it used to be. Unfortunately, we're not as big as a lot of the big competitors out there, so we don't have those giant marketing dollars to flood every store and flood every publication and sponsor every TV show out there. You really, as a smaller company, kind of have to pick and choose where your focus is. And over the last several years, our big main focus has been the Southeast, Florida, the Gulf, Louisiana, that whole area. And some of the rods we introduced, like the DTR rods over the last, was that 2 years ago? Those are DTR, standing for down the road, right? That's the nickname for on your way down to Venice there.
Because those were originally started in Louisiana, right?
Exactly, yeah. And
I like those, though.
They're making them into a lot of retailers. A lot of people have them on their boats. They just got a great, clean look. But between those and then the East Coast custom rods, we worked with several of our pro staffers and captains and guides down in Florida. And we really refined that whole lineup of rods. They don't have 20 or 30 rods within those families. It might only be 10 or 12 rods, but they're very specific. Our first kind of foray into that was those SRT, E, and P rods, the Elite and Premier. And I know you use those quite a bit on your show there.
I love that Premier SRT. Yeah,
exactly. And that's, SRT, which was, the redfish, trout, redfish, and the speckled trout rods.
Right.
Well, to give you an idea, Dave, that SRT, I think it was last September, we're filming one of the Spanish shows. We hooked about a 70-pound tarpon right at the end of the show, and we landed the sucker.
Nice.
And it was on the Helios 30, and the SRT Premier with 15-pound fins line. And we were just lucky. We were on 5 feet of water when we hooked this tarpon. So I was able to, maneuver it. But still, that equipment, that little reel, and I mean, that fish, the first run must have been 75 yards nonstop. Anybody that ever uses those rods or those reels, they've always been so impressed. And I grew up the last quite a few years with Helios, but then I started with the new stuff. And honestly, using the Inspira, I kind of like, hey, Helios is pretty good reel, but you know what?
Yeah.
I kind of like this reel a little bit
I
more.
agree with you, Sergio. I fell in love with the Inspira. That's
And
nice
it,
reel.
it's not just how finesse, how nice the reel was. I like the color too. And
Yeah, they look good.
color plays a role in people buying stuff.
It's just like lures.
That
Exactly.
blue rod, people love that
Yeah.
SRT Premier. They love the color of those two rods and the Elite. I mean, it's pleasing to the eyes. And some people say, well, what I tell them is, well, when the fish is looking up, they can't see it because it's the color of the sky.
Yeah, exactly. It blends right in. That's perfect.
Right. Well, look at
When I was
the show.
using the red ones, people used to say, man, those fish can see those rods a mile away.
Scare the fish away.
Right. Look at the show we did, Sergio, with Michael Dawson. At the end, I caught 2 tarpon on that light setup. You got one of the tarpon on that light setup. And
those were like 30, 40-pound tarpon, maybe 50, a couple of them.
yeah, that one was like 50, I think.
So
That's that fun size fish. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like those.
it's a lot more fun than using the real big ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so we got the Inspira and we got the X Inspira. One of I know it's kind of like, what was the reasoning for the ITX to CB? That's kind of fits it like in between. Give us a reason why.
So the old ITX, if you remember, was a black and silver reel.
Right.
It was a black-bodied reel and had the silver spool, silver handle, some
Right.
silver highlights to it. Nice reels. They did really good for us for a while, but we wanted to really change that up. We wanted to lighten up the reel. We wanted to just kind of give it a little bit more appeal, and it's more into the JDM market when we created that, which is the Japan domestic market. They get very technical on those reels over in Japan. As I mentioned, we're a Taiwanese company. We're not a Japanese company, but the JDM market really took off over the last several years. So your high-end bass publications and all these different people that are really getting into this JDM, which is what that reel is all about. So with that, we used our new technology. We've got the flight drive, the flight shaft. We've got that carbon fiber handle. Just a lot of different technology within that particular reel that just made it very unique to what we had in our current lineup. That was about 3 or 4 years ago now that 3 years ago, I think, that we introduced that reel. Very lightweight. It started at a 1,000 size and went up to a 4,000 size. So light inshore, but also for your angler that's ice fishing, or maybe they're finessing bass around docks on the freshwater side. But since then, we've taken that the flight shaft, flight spool, and some of that flight technology, and we've moved that into reels like the Inspira. So Inspira, being a generation newer than the ITX CB, it has that newer technology inside. And if you're not familiar with what that is, that flight drive and flight shaft, is you have your regular spool shaft, but it's got 2 ball bearings that sit on either side of that shaft itself. So it doesn't give it any wobble, and it makes it very, very smooth and free. It's a cool little technology within those reels. But so like the reel we've been talking about, that Inspira, it's got it, and you're only at that $100 price point.
Right. Now let me ask you this. Talk about like the shaft of the reel, because I was reading, I think it was on the X series. I don't know. Does the X series and the Inspira have the same material for the shaft in the middle, or no?
That is a great question, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, then let me ask you this. On the X series, they were saying it's a hardened aluminum shaft to get it lighter, I guess. And now, first thing, when I hear aluminum, I'm thinking, oh, that's going to flex. But obviously, if it's hardened, so I want to know a little bit about that. Like, even though it's aluminum, but it's obviously heat treated in a certain way, I guess, to make it strong.
Exactly. So, aluminum, it's not like an aluminum can. It's right. If you look at like reels, like our machined aluminum reels, like the Makaira, those are all aluminum reels. In general, that's made out of bar stock aluminum, where they're actually getting through that whole reel. They're carving it out, and it's one piece frame and body. So that hardened aluminum that they're using for that spool shaft on that X series is very rigid and very strong. You're not going to get any flaxing or wobble or anything else on that.
Right.
The Inspira, I think, uses our HDG, the proprietary material I was talking about earlier. So the X is aluminum, and then the other one's got the HPG.
Okay. Which they're lightening up the X series is basically what they're doing. So It's not sacrificing any kind of strength then at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
And it's a one-piece seamless bail wire design too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of those Makairas, one of the other big introductions we had this year. And did you guys go to ICAST by chance?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
So the big introduction we had on the big reel side, which was kind of specific for Florida as well as down into the Gulf, was that new Makaira land-based shark fishing reel. Don't know if you guys got to see that reel or not, but that was a new reel specific for that on our side. That's our big lever drag reels. We've got a 50 wide and then a new 80 size. So it's a big diameter reel, not an 80 wide, just an 80, not even a narrow, just a standard 80. But on the side of it, it's got a big etched hammerhead shark on it, oversized handle. It's got a bunch of new technology on the inside. But, just talking about those aluminum reels, and that aluminum, the density and how the strength of it, we made those specifically for land-based shark fishing. These guys that are out there fishing, they're taking the drone and dropping the bait, or the kayak and dropping the bait way offshore, and they're catching these monster hammerhead and bull sharks and everything else.
Well, you just gave me a little memory. Now, you had a memory a little while ago. Now you just brought a memory up in my head. When I was younger, my uncle, when I first moved down here, I think I was 12. I think when I hit about 13, 14, he took me to Mastery's, big local shop back in the day here. And he bought me a shark setup. Larry Mastery set it all up for me. And the thing was, we would go out to Reddington Pier, and it was like a large John boat would come by the pier, and he would put all the baits in the back of the boat in a line, lined up. He'd take them out and he'd drop them one at a time out there. Your technology now, you got drones and everything else that can do it for you. But old school, back when I was doing it, it was a John boat and an actual guy that came out and helped you do it. That's
really cool.
Well, let's see now. What about a little bit on that DTR rods, the custom? Tell us a little bit about those rods now.
So the DTR are all inshore rods. We've actually got two series of DTR. We've got the DTR inshore and then DTR offshore. So those DTR inshore rods are technique-specific rods. So you might have a pop-in cork rod, or you might have a Carolina rig rod, or there's several different ones. So you might see two that are a 7-foot, one piece, medium light, dash, PC for pop-in cork, or they'll be a similar action on the model, 7-foot, medium light, but one's going to have a faster tip, one's going to be a little bit more parabolic, and built specifically for those different techniques. In general, we don't do technique-specific rods because it really pigeonholes that particular rod.
Right.
The angler will pick it up and they'll look at it and go, "Ooh, this says pop-in cork. I can't fish this for anything else."
Yeah.
But a seasoned angler can pick that thing up. They can bend it. They know what that action is. They're like, "Wow, this says pop-in cork, but it's perfect for whatever this other technique that I'm doing is." So within that, like on the inshore series, there's probably 12-ish to 15 rods in that family. Mostly all spinning. There might be one or two casting left for some of the, like Louisiana and into Texas. There's a few more bait cast fishermen than there are like down in Florida. But and then on the offshore, on the DTR, like as I mentioned, down the road. So those are for the anglers that are out fishing the rigs. So you have more of your deep drop rods or your trolling rods and the short butt spinning rods. And these guys are chasing amberjack in the deep rigs and things like that. But it's a very comprehensive series of rods, both inshore and offshore, built specifically for what you guys are doing down there in Florida, Texas, and Louisiana.
At ICAST, I was checking those out because that might be the next rod that I get from you guys, next series of rods. Now, somebody was saying that you guys were maybe going to come out with a 7'6" in the DTR. Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay, because I think the longest I've seen was what, 7'2" or 7.
Yeah, could be 7'2".
7'2".
It's people always ask us about long rods. Like we used to have some 8-foot one-piece rods. but just the way of the world now, the shipping on this product is
Sure.
really, really bad. So like if for us to ship an 8-foot one-piece rod, it now becomes freight. So it's not just that I'm shipping it to you and I have to pay for shipping, I have to pay for freight. So freight costs. So for like California to you guys in Florida for like an 8-foot one-piece rod now becomes $150 rather than say $30 or $40 to ship it across the country.
Right.
So
But you know, George, you can go to the SRT, you can get 7.6, which is
yeah,
what I
there's
use in the
in
SRT.
there.
Right. I'm looking for something that DTR just felt, I do a lot of under the mangroves fishing to where I got almost locked down drags. And that's where that speed of that reel comes in handy to get that fish out from underneath. So I need that little bit quicker action to where it loads up faster. I don't want the flex per se, you know what I'm saying? And that DTR felt perfect for that.
Yeah, exactly. I'd hate to, I wouldn't want to steer you in the wrong direction, but I'm trying to think like a show like, we'll come out to the Miami Boat Show and we'll have several series of rods with us down there. It's like the place you can actually put them in your hand and bend them.
Right.
A lot of retailers down there don't have a full selection of rods at this point. iCast is like the other place, but something that you're looking for would probably fall into one of our bass series of rods at this point. So something, specifically that we built for bass, but it's obviously going to cross over into the saltwater market as well as most inshore rods do.
Yeah, I had the other one in my hand, but I couldn't find it in 7.6 was the Reflections rod.
The Reflections rods are a great all-around rod, one piece, two piece, spinning and casting. They're probably a little bit more of a moderate to fast action versus the parabolic SRT rods. So that might have a little bit more of what you're looking for in it. The ePixer rods, the ePixer inshore rods, they've got some 7.6s in there as well. There's a 7.6 medium heavy and a heavy. Those are going to be a little bit, it's a medium fast taper to it.
Right.
So it's going to have a little bit more tip to it, but more backbone on that thing as you're setting the hook as well.
So now the SRT you're saying is more of a full rod bend, parabolic curve? Not
all of them. So some of them are, they're also listed as a medium or a moderate fast taper to them. So they're going to be very similar. If you're looking for something with just a true fast action where it's basically just bending at the tip, that would most likely be in one of the Bass series rods.
Okay. All right. Yeah, a lot of people, they don't know about the difference in an 8 to 17 pound pole is not the same across the board.
Exactly. Exactly. If you're looking for hook sets, out here on the West Coast where we're located, there's several fish have soft mouths and several fish have hard mouths. You guys have the same thing on your side. So if I'm rearing back and I'm going to set the hook on one of our inshore fish, like a spotted bay bass, I want to be able to drive that hook in. So I'm looking for something with some backbone, just enough tip action to get whatever lure or whatever I'm doing to make that action happen, versus one of our softer mouth fish where I don't want to, if I rear back and do that same exact action, I'm going to rip that right out of that thing's mouth. That
would be our spotted sea trout for us over here.
Yeah, exactly. Very soft mouth. If you pull too hard, you're going to rip his mouth. But then the snook is nothing but a saltwater bass.
Exactly.
Yeah, on steroids.
Yeah, exactly.
It's freshwater bass on steroids.
Exactly.
So you do with snook, you want a little tougher tip on it because you got to drive that hook in. They got that big bony, although circle hook seems to be doing a really good job.
Now in a 7.6, so in the SRT, which model would I be looking at? You think that would be the best in that situation?
So, if you're getting into some of the bigger snook, I'd look at that medium heavy rod, that 7.6 medium heavy. That's a 10 to 20 rod. We do have an 8 to 17, but that 10 to 20 is probably going to give you a little bit more backbone.
Now, how is the tip on that, though? Because sometimes we get stuck, like right now, we're throwing a lot of, unfortunately, we had a hatch happen, so we got a lot of small live baits right now.
You got to go to the medium.
Yeah, you probably want to go with the medium then.
And that's what I use. Almost all of mine, I got some medium heavy, but almost all of mine are the medium.
Right.
I use the medium heavy mostly if I'm going to be throwing like some heavier plugs or when I'm dead casting cut bait on the bottom.
Right.
Stuff like that. But most of the time I find the medium is kind of like a nice happy medium overall. And I've been using these now since they came out. So I've
The
had
key is
real-
when you're at Sergio's house, you got to pop in the garage there and shake a couple of those
Yeah.
rods.
I see them
Well-
right behind me, right there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, what's
They
funny
all
is,
came in. The rods came in today. The reels came in Friday. And you can see I got all the power poles, trolling motor, everything sitting there for the new boat. You know, so
yeah, I actually had when doing the show, you know, because with the SRTs, I had to adjust my hook set because I was used to be able just to do a short, quick little hook set. Or with the SRT, you got to pull back a little further to let it build up to get that. You know, it's just a different feel, you know.
but
Once you get used to
what
it,
I like
what-
about it is
Yeah.
when you hook a fish, the action, you just kind of, I don't know,
Oh, yeah.
my clients like it a little more because the way it gives a little, it gives you a little more
Yeah.
excitement than a stiffer rod.
Well, and on the also in mentioning that clients that aren't used to fighting fish, that pole gives them forgiveness.
That's right. Now the medium heavy, if you're going to fish a lot of docks, that's a good place
Yeah, yeah,
because you got a little bit, but the average, I've been mostly using the mediums, you know,
yeah.
but I can't,
And of course, it all depends if you're fishing straight braid or if you've got all monofilament or fluorocarbon,
Oh, sure.
short leader, long leader.
I think down here, Dave, where we're at, I hardly
Mostly.
don't see anybody using mono.
Very
Yeah, we
few.
don't.
We use a longer leader, a fluorocarbon, but almost everybody's using braid.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much the way of the world now. Just about everybody's on braid now, but we'll still see. We'll go to some places where they're still
Yeah.
spooling up with monofilament, and if they've got that full parabolic medium rod and they made a 30-yard cast, when they rear back and set that thing, the stretch in that mono, that fish doesn't even know anything's even trying to hook it.
Yeah, I know a couple of captains that are still using mono right now, and I'm like, come on, get with the times.
Yeah, really.
Well, Dave, we want to thank you for your time because I know you've been real busy. I'm glad you were able to get you up on the air finally.
No
Yeah.
worries. I'm glad you had me, and I'm glad we were able to do it. I know we've been talking about it for a long time. You know, we've got Gil Perez, who just moved out to Florida there. He's been there for about almost for this whole year. I think he moved out right about January 1st. But, you know, he's a local guy out there now. So we'll have him on the show sometime, and he can talk about some of the techniques he's learned and, you know, some of the retail partners that he's been working with and all kinds of good stuff.
Good. I appreciate it. And thank you again, Dave. And get some
Appreciate it.
rest, will you? I'll talk
Yeah,
to
No
you.
appreciate
worries
it.
at all. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Have a good one. Yeah, appreciate all the information he gave us. You know,
Yeah, that was really good.
we got to get some reports on.
We've
that.
got to get some fishing reports out. But why don't we start with Michael Dawson?
Okay.
Hi guys, Captain Michael Dawson here at Patriot Guide Source here with this week's fishing report. Fishing has been absolutely phenomenal this week. All that rain from the last hurricane is still adding fresh water to our system. Water's still very tannin, and this has these redfish really fired off. Redfish has really been the only key fish going off, but they've been going off phenomenally. We're getting 40 to 50 a trip. Yeah, you heard that right. 40 to 50 redfish a trip right now. Cut bait on the bottom is definitely key. Dirty water, let them smell it out. Cut pinfish, mullet, threadfin, anything cut and stinky on the bottom works well. Get on your favorite flats anywhere in front of those oyster beds, mangrove shoreline, little creeks flowing out has been really well. The mouth of the Anclote River, mouth of the Cody, mouth of Gulf Harbors, all these flats where the freshwater is pushing these fish out from underneath the docks and canals has been really well. Again, soak that cut bait on the bottom, chum a bunch of pieces of cut bait out there, and get them to come to you. Might be 15-20 minutes before you get a bite, but once they come in, it has been absolutely great. Light tackle, they've been staying out in the open flats more than under the trees, so don't start fishing underneath the mangroves typically this time of year. Get out there in the open flat and just get some bait thrown out there, and you should do pretty well. Captain Michael Dawson, Patriotic Guide Service.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
Michael.
Nice report. Nice report.
All right, let's get Tony Franklin on.
Hi, this is Captain Tony Franklin back with you with this week's fishing report. The weather's been definitely hot. We've had some windy weather. We've had a little bit of all types of different conditions. I've had a lot of freshwater runoff, a lot of freshwater rain in the bay. So let's get into the fishing report for this week. Snook bite, pretty good around deeper water, around rocky structures, mangroves, deeper water. The water is very warm, so you want to fish deeper water for these snook, or drop-offs 5 or 6 feet up against deeper mangrove areas with rocks or any type of dock formations or residential docks, those type of things where you have deeper water up against there. And if there's mangroves around in that same scenario, it's even better. The bait's a little bit small on the grass flats, but there's usable size bait in there. It doesn't matter. If you get small ones, just put a small cork on there and use that. Any type of small bobber will work. A clip-on one works really good with a little bit of weighted clip-on bobber. The trout bite has still been excellent. 5 to 6 feet of water. We're catching large speckled trout. We're catching also some sand trout mixed in the same area. There's been some mackerel around, although the fresh water has slowed that down a little depending on what end of the bay you're on. As you get more towards the south end of the bay, the mackerel fishing has been a little better this week with the information that I've heard anyway. Been bonnet head sharks, black tips, they've been on the flats too. Been redfish around once again on the high tide, and a little deeper areas of the mangroves, like I was telling you about the snook. They're just a little deeper off those mangroves because this water is very warm. Catching large mangroves. The deeper off those water is very warm. Catching large mangrove snapper this week. So the snapper action has really picked up. You'll find them around range markers, around the bridges. You'll also find them around rocky formations. So pretty much all around, we've had a good bite this week. So get out on the water. Another key tip this week, get out early, fish early, get off the water before the storms get here, and it'll actually be cooler and the fish will bite better early in the morning. So that's my report for this week. Tight lines, and I'll see you on the water.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And yeah, George, I've been getting a lot of reports, a lot of redfish. Talked to Eddie Caldwell today. He got into a whole bunch of redfish.
Yeah, this week I was catching more redfish than snook by any means, where it used to be the other way around.
This has been the best redfish trip he's had in 2 or 3 years. He said they were just, he caught about 15 or 17 of them, he said.
Yeah, it's been getting really good. And I'm actually, when I go out now, I plan on catching more reds than snook, where it used to be the other way around.
That's right. You know, so hey, maybe they're making a comeback. You know?
Yeah, it seems like it. It's good to see. I'll tell you that. Like, I can actually, you know, for a while there, you never went out and planned on catching redfish. Where now it's like I'm going out and actually targeting redfish and getting them. And there's been a lot, and it kind of goes together. There's been a lot more mullet schools out there, and a lot of the reds also been running around with, besides the tree line, some of the reds have been in with the mullet schools. So it's kind of getting back to like it used to be.
All of a sudden, my Facebook page went off. That's all right.
But
all
yeah,
right. We're back again. Looks like. There we go.
But like I said, it's been to where I'm actually going out and targeting redfish. You know, where
it's nice because it's been like 3 years since we've had any kind of redfish action. You know,
yeah, good action
here or there. You know?
And now, like I was saying, you know, I'm getting them out from underneath the mangroves, but now there's a lot of good mullet schools that are 100, 200 feet away from the mangroves, and there's redfish mixed in with them also. So it's been good.
So let's hope this is the beginning of a new era for redfish again.
Yes.
Even though, you know, it's funny. Some people said they got into a bunch of big ones, and then some of them say, you know, the school I was on were all 20 to 22, 18 inches.
What I've noticed now is it depends on where you're fishing, because I went out 3 days in a row for redfish, and first day, the one area I fished, completely different area. Well, I actually went south, caught really nice redfish to oversized redfish. Next day I went out, I went a little north, and nothing but juvenile bottom of the slot. And then the next day I went out, I went further north and got into slot to oversized. So it depends on where you're fishing.
But at least we know they're coming back.
I'm getting them. Yeah, you're getting them.
that's all you can ask for, you know?
And it's like that's the north to south, but if you go over to Tampa side, and then if you go over to Ruskin, we're getting redfish reports from everywhere. At
Everywhere.
Fort DeSoto also again.
I look at my Facebook page and everybody seems to be catching them. So,
So
well,
it's good to see.
I tell you what, let's get your report on.
I think we got Pam.
Well, we get Pam. You want to get Pam? All right. Let's get Pam on there.
Note to self, pay more attention to the tides. Oh, goodness. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Pam from Tampa Fishing Outfitters and giving you the kayak report. The Nature Coast has been on fire. Redfish all over the place. Had an opportunity to fish with some friends of mine. Dylan ended up with a nice tarpon on cut bait from the kayak. Cut bait on the bottom. Had a great time with that one. A lot of trout. Dylan caught a trout. I got some trout as well as some lovely redfish. So the fish fight is on fire right now. In the Nature Coast, there are shrimp all over the place. Here's a few selections. If you want to use artificials, that'll work. I came back to the launch and I had 3 shrimp sitting in the back of my kayak that jumped into the boat. But if you're fishing the Nature Coast, please watch the tides. As you can see in this last photo, I kind of missed the tide and came back on an extra low tide and ended up walking through the mud for about 20 yards to get my kayak back in. But anyhow, tight lines and you'll have a great time.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, you got to what? Especially, you know, I didn't realize the tides dropped that much on that coast because we're not in the negative tide season yet. We got 3 or 4 more months to go. You know.
Donald says the water up by Safety Harbor had a terrible smell and was very brown. Yeah, unfortunately, Donald, he's asking about sewage dump. Yeah, there was. I was talking about that a couple of shows ago where we were talking about hope we don't do anything to the bay to mess anything up. Now we got these redfish coming back, but if you Google it, you can see a map of where all the dumps happened, and it's not really good.
And the trouble is the EPA just gives them a slap in the hand and a little fine.
And it makes no sense because your system should be sealed enough that it don't matter if it's raining a whole bunch.
Right.
That should not happen. Now I know, I want to say, I forget now if it was Hillsborough County, but somebody already put a bunch of money into it. Like they're starting to change their system so that when it rains a lot, it shouldn't affect sewage coming out. You know, that's just stupid. We're the rain capital of the world besides the sunshine capital. And but yeah, Donald, if you Google it, you can find the chart, the map, and it's it's kind of disheartening. That's why I didn't bring it up for the last 2 weeks because I don't want to discourage anybody from going fishing.
And I wonder how he did on Saturday at his tournament. I couldn't make it.
He said there was 1 snook, 3 reds, 1 trout, lots of ladyfish and catfish. Yeah, but I'd rather jump a bunch of ladyfish than not catch anything. That's
right. Hey, ladyfish and jacks have saved me many a time, especially in the winter when things were slow and you get into school of those big jacks.
Oh, yeah.
And they catch 3 or 4 of those and wear them out. They're just, especially people from up north, they don't fish at all.
Sure. I had a trip. I had 4 guys on the boat. It was 2 fathers, 2 sons, and it was just terrible cold front came through the night before. And it was just cold, like for us, cold and windy. And we caught maybe 1 or 2 redfish, and the bite just wasn't happening. I'm like, you know what? I knew the jacks were by the power plant. I'm like, we're going to go to the power plant. Went to the power plant, and we were quadrupled up. Everybody was having a good time, trying not to get tangled with each other. It was just a madhouse, and it finished the trip off really nice. So I'll take a jack when the action's not hot any day.
Hey, I'll take a jack and ladyfish when there's no action.
Yeah.
That's action.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And
But,
jacks, you got to admit, jacks, pound for pound, hardest fighting fish in the bay.
in the winter, you get those 8-9 pounders.
Yep.
I mean, and let's face it, a guy that doesn't fish much or is a freshwater fisherman, he ain't never had anything at the end of his rod that can pull like one of those big jacks.
Yesterday, I had a client, husband and wife on my boat yesterday. We were fishing this area, and it was the weekend, so you got to figure another small, like, I wasn't a canoe, but it was like a canoe style boat, husband and wife, little kicker motor in the back. So they pulled up about 100 feet away from us, and they anchored down. They started fishing. Next thing you know, she hooked into a jack, and it was funny watching her. She would have the heck of a time with it. Probably about a 5-pounder.
All right, now we better get your report in.
All right.
All right.
Hey guys, this is Captain George Haslick of Fish Hunter Fishing Charters coming to you from South Tampa. Well, the redfish all came out from underneath the mangroves. This week when I'm fishing, it's kind of weird. Last week they were more scattered out from the mangroves, and then this week they've been tucked up underneath the mangroves. The redfish bite has definitely improved. I think it's from all the rain and cooling off the water a little bit. Maybe it's something to do with the salinity. And on the salinity note, watch how far back you go in the backwaters, because your bait can die if you get too much fresh water, especially the smaller whitebaits. The larger the whitebait, the tougher they are, and they can last a little bit longer. The snook, oddly, we were getting them out from underneath the mangroves, but we were also getting them out in the open. We even got hooked up to some snook on a gold spoon, up to about 30 inches, so that was kind of neat. We also caught a mullet on a gold spoon, and I've caught a few mullet on lures, like 2, and we've also caught 2 on whitebait in the past, but that's over 30, 40 years of fishing. But it's pretty neat to see. The trout, still in about, I'd say, 5 to 7 feet of water. The edges of your grass flats, where it drops off and goes deeper. Look for shoals where you got deeper water and it comes up. Reverse principle, basically what's happening there. That shoal is attracting bait. The bait is holding the fish. The edges of the grass flats, same thing. It's holding better bait. And there's a ton of small whitebait out there, so there's no shortage of food supply. It's just a problem of getting your better baits that you can cast. If you have a bunch of small baits, you can always go to using a float to give you the weight. Then you'll be able to cast and get the distance you need. I have not messed with mackerel over the last week or so. It's been a little windy on and off. A couple of days have been super flat calm. Today wasn't too bad. When the storms came through, it kicked up, but so we'll see. There might be some mackerel around. I really haven't checked into that. The main thing I've been catching is snook and redfish. And like I said, on the higher tides, they're pushing way up under the mangrove. So try to get your cast to the edge of the mangrove, if not underneath if you can. And that'll work pretty good. We're also catching them on cut bait. Cut pinfish, also live pinfish, cut threadfin, live threadfin, cut whitebait, and live whitebait. Snook and redfish have been eating those really good. I've been running about a 4-foot fluorocarbon leader, 25-pound test, with a 1-aught on the live bait, depending on how big they are, and then a 2-aught on the cut bait. All right, this has been Captain George Haslick. Have a good day.
Way to go, George. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm just tickled pink that there's redfish.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, you go out there and you know, I would catch 1 or 2 a week, but there's 1 or 2 by luck.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now we're putting like 10 to the boat in a trip.
And now, like you said, now you can go out and hopefully you can get 10 or 12
Target
that
'em.
one day.
And the thing, coalition, I don't know what I'm looking for, but the thing I see also that's happening is the mullet schools are back, and multiple mullet schools and big schools of them. And the one day we were fishing the tree line and getting fish, and then behind the boat we had a depression that was maybe about 50 feet behind the boat out in the open flat, and there was snook and redfish in that too. And every time the mullet school would come into that hole, we'd pull a redfish out of there. But there was snook out in the open. We started throwing, like I said, the gold spoon, and we were getting snook on a gold spoon.
So just thank God. That's all I can
Yes,
say.
yes.
Thank you, Lord, that the redfish are back. You know,
Yep.
and I'm sorry that we had some problems today with the Florida West Coast Fishing Report, but we got you back on track. And please, by the way, we want to thank you very much, George.
Yep.
I got a nice little. It was a text, actually, from YouTube telling us congratulations that we have broken 25,000 subscribers.
Awesome. Awesome.
So we're sitting at about 25,200 subscribers. And it was nice of you two that they told us that, and they were very happy with us. And again, it's not you and me, it's the people that are subscribing, the people that are watching the show. And Mike Haynes and I were talking today. He's 500 views behind one of our number one show, and he's going to try to surpass that. He's working hard, but he was down in the weather this week, but he's gonna be back out on the water next week.
Yeah, get well, buddy. Get well.
Get well. And I want to thank you, everybody, for watching the show, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in.